Sup guys, I've had a hankering for blowing thousands of dollars recently, so I'm gonna go get laser eye surgery. The doctors asked me if I wanted to see the world in a more eye-popping point of view, so naturally I said hell yeah. I can only see in stereoscopic 3D now. Super Mario 3D Land, it happened, didn't it? Of the 3D Mario games hierarchy, 3D Land is kind of disregarded in terms of popularity and recognizability. With every other 3D Mario game, you could easily walk up to someone on the street and say, the green star hunting in Mario Galaxy 2 was bullshit, right? And people would understand what you meant, but if you were to bring up anything about 3D Land, you just get a weird look in response. Why is that? Why is this game so forgotten about amongst its contemporaries? Well, let's go back to 2011. The Nintendo 3DS had just launched around the world with a $250 price tag and games, I guess. Yeah, the 3DS didn't have the greatest launch in the world. The pairing of a lack of compelling games and that pretty big price tag just didn't make the handheld all too appealing to consumers. I mean, what were they supposed to play at launch? Asphalt 3D? Lego Star Wars? Eventually the 3DS would get a fairly significant price cut, but all in all, if you got a 3DS at launch, it was either because A, you were a diehard Nintendo fan who wanted to play games like Pilotwings Resort or Steel Diver, B, you just loved to blow $250, or C, you're investing early on in order to wait for some of Nintendo's bigger games. Despite the bare-bones launch, Nintendo was promising a ton of heavy-hitting titles later down the pipeline. Kid Icarus Uprising, Animal Crossing New Leaf, Snake Eater 3D, Mario Kart 7, a new Smash Bros. Game, and of course, a brand new 3D Mario game. Behind the scenes, Nintendo had been working on a new 3D Mario game for the handheld that was meant to bridge the gap between the 2D and 3D styles of Mario games. Super Mario 3D Land was first debuted to the world at GDC 2011, with a couple of screenshots and an unfinished logo being the only glimpses into the project we were able to see. Talk about an odd reveal. I don't know why Nintendo didn't just wait until E3 to show more on the game, though I guess they were just really desperate to get more support for the 3DS, so whatever. One thing that was highlighted, however, was the inclusion of a tail in the logo. Many looked at the tail and theorized that the raccoon suit from Mario 3 was going to make a comeback, after being absent from every other Mario game after its inclusion. The raccoon suit allowed Mario to soar across levels and swing his tail as an offensive measure, so it was really promising that a power-up like that would be appearing in a 3D Mario game. 3D Land was more formally revealed at E3 2011. The logo was still the same, but at least we had actual gameplay and the confirmation that Tanuki Mario was indeed in the game. Wait a minute. Okay, so Tanuki Mario in Mario 3 was basically the same as Raccoon Mario, just with Mario in a more degrading costume and a statue transformation ability, so overall, nothing was really lost. What was a huge loss, however, was Mario's lack of flying into the air. He could only hover for a little bit with the power-up, which is kind of lame. I get that designing straightforward 3D levels like the ones in this game around a flight mechanic would probably be incredibly difficult, but what was the point of bringing back a long-forgotten power-up if you can't even do its primary function that it was designed for? Well, despite the Tanuki controversy, 3D Land looked great. Sure, the game did seem a bit slow. For some reason the gameplay footage they used didn't have the player hold down the run button, but the structure of it being more so like a 2D Mario game with flagpoles and power-ups and the like looked interesting, and the game's presentation as a whole was phenomenal for a 3DS game. Later on, the game would receive its finalized title of Super Mario 3D Land, which is fine, I guess. The title is a little basic for my liking. You could probably call most 3D Mario games Super Mario 3D Land and it would get the same point across, but the 3D in the title does make sense, so whatever. The title was also a bit of a reference to the Super Mario Land games on the Game Boy, which is funny to me because the final product had absolutely nothing that referenced anything in those games, so that was fun. 3D Land would get more trailers throughout the year, and when it released on November 13th, 2011 here in North America, it was praised for being just the title the 3DS needed. The 3D gimmick was used in effective ways, and it was a big contributor in justifying the gimmick of the system completely. The praise from this game and Mario Kart 7 helped to really give the 3DS some legs to stand on, and afterwards helped to really kick the system into gear. The 3DS grew to be pretty popular after 3D Land's release. Sure, it wasn't as big as the DS, but the handheld started to be a pretty big success, and it practically saved Nintendo when they were too busy drooling with the Wii U. But then was then, and now is now, and now, no one gives a shit about this game, so why? Well, let's dive in and find out. This is Super Mario 3D Land. But first, a disclaimer. I don't own a 3DS capture card, and showing camera footage can only do so much, so I had to cheat with this one. I've decided to commit a cardinal sin and emulate 3D Land. It's real fucking weird playing this with a DualShock controller. Now before you point those pitchforks at me, I should preface that I do legally own the game, and support for the 3DS has officially dried up anyway, so it's not like I'm stealing some of Nintendo's sales. Don't worry, I'm still going to hell for doing this, but at least I was a little bit justified in my mind. Our story begins with a great storm that causes super leaves to be spread all across the land of the Mushroom King. Bowser Kidnap speech. Did I miss something here? Okay, so it's once again the standard plot we've been spoon-fed since 1985. However, here it is severely downplayed. You don't even get a cutscene showing how Peach got kidnapped, you just get a JPEG and you gotta go save her. I mean, I guess the small detail of the big-ass tree spreading the super leaves everywhere is something new, but overall the story is just whatever. I do like how you get these little letters showing Peach trying to escape throughout the game though. I think that's a fun little detail, and some of the cutscenes when you confront Bowser at the end have a lot of personality too. I wish the rest of the game was as endearing as these cutscenes, but alas, the plot is once again kind of lame. I'm missing Galaxy's story more and more every day. Okay, when you first boot up the game, you get this little gameplay demo, followed by an optical illusion meant to showcase the game's presentation and 3D functionality. I guess that means we should talk about the 3D first. Sliding up the 3D slider of the 3DS allows the player to see more depth in objects and environments. For example, seeing this optical illusion in 2D makes it look like it's one solid object, while in 3D you more clearly see how the structure is designed due to the added depth. As a whole, the 3D functionality for this game works wonderfully. Sure, the game is completely playable in 2D only, but if you want objects to have more depth or pop out more, then yeah, 3D is the way to go. It may be a little hard to justify playing in 3D if you're playing it on the original 3DS or 3DS XL though. These systems are always a little finicky with you constantly having to position the handheld just right to get the true 3D effect. But if you're playing it on a new 3DS or can just stomach playing it in a potentially odd position, then yeah, I'd recommend it. This game is very heavily designed around the feature, with camera angles and perspectives constantly changing to make it appear like Mario's popping out of the screen. And while it is a pretty cool effect, it isn't a wholly necessary one. In interviews, developers of the game would constantly bring up how the 3D provided more accuracy in platforming and defeating enemies, and I mean, they sort of have a point. It does slightly provide more accuracy, but the game isn't completely unplayable in 2D. I was able to maneuver around every perspective-based puzzle or illusion in this game in 2D just fine, and while yes, there is a slight increase in accuracy, it isn't enough to completely warrant playing exclusively in 3D. So as a result, you have a platformer that is structuring itself around zany camera angles and perspectives, with an optional gimmick that only slightly improves the overall experience. It's like if you could play Super Mario 64 in 3D. Yeah, it sounds pretty cool and you could probably see where you were platforming to a bit better, but the game is still perfectly fine on its own, so what's the point? Okay, I've been dogging on the number 3 and the 4th letter of the alphabet for long enough, I think we get it. So what else does Super Mario 3D Land have to offer? Well, I guess we should bring up some positives first. Right off the bat, this game looks incredible. For a game that released less than a year into a new system's life, it's amazing how it's still quite possibly the best looking game out of its entire library. I also think Mario handles pretty well too. A little basic, mostly due to the game's structure, and a tad slow even after holding down the run button, but still well. He even has a couple of moves from other 3D Mario games like the long jump and side somersault. However, I rarely found myself using these. The long jump just feels like garbage here, and the side somersault wasn't super easy to pull off consistently. There's also no triple jump, which I found kind of odd. That would have worked really well here, but alas, it wasn't meant to be. Sadly, however, those are where most of my positives end because the rest of the game is one of the most painfully simplistic Mario games I've ever played. The game is designed as a 2D Mario game you can play in 3D, which means that the entirety of the game is structured around you getting to the end of a level and touching the flagpole. There's no branching paths, reasons to explore, you just have to get to the end in time and move on. Sure, you can find these star medals which you'll need a certain amount of in order to beat the game, but they don't help to make these levels feel any less basic. This has got to be the most straightforward Mario game ever made. None of the levels are designed poorly, but none of them stand out in any way. They're all just kind of bland and forgettable. There isn't even a hub world, just a straightforward world map leading to the next levels with no forks in the road or anything. I think a big contributor to the staleness of the levels is a lack of original concepts. Everything in this game feels like it's already been done before, and because of that, 3D Land doesn't really have a unique identity. There are 8 worlds like in most 2D Mario games, though thankfully they don't have levels based around themes we've already seen before. Every level has its own theme, so that means you don't have to exclusively play only desert levels in World 2 or grass levels in World 1. If you want to play a grass-themed level in World 8, be my guest, I won't judge. However, that doesn't fix the levels from being so basic, and not helping things is just how easy this game is. Coins and extra lives are everywhere, which just murders the difficulty of the game and makes it even more bland. The game only really starts to pick up and challenge towards the very end, but until that point, you're practically on rails for the whole thing. I mean, sure, you can get done with the game in like 3 hours, but man are those 3 hours kind of dull. Well, let's talk about the power-ups now. The standard mushroom, fire flower, and star are here once again, but obviously the big highlight of this game is the super leaf. Press Y or X to attack enemies with your tail, and hold the jump button after jumping to hover for a short moment. They make it sound pretty simple, but honestly the Tanuki suit kind of breaks the game even more. Having the hover feature incredibly simplifies platforming, and you'll easily become over-reliant on it to the point where playing the game without it just feels wrong. There's also an alternate version of the super leaf called the statue leaf. It's pretty much the same except you turn into a statue after doing a ground pound. Fun. The boomerang flower makes its debut here, and while it isn't one of my favorites considering the fire flower does its exact function but better, you can still grab star medals with the boomerang, and it is kinda good for dealing with thrusts from afar. There's the propeller box that pretty much just functions as the propeller suit in the new Super Mario Bros. Games. Don't know why they didn't just use that. You can propel into the air by holding the jump button, then slow your descent by holding it down some more. Moving on. If you somehow keep dying over and over, you can get the invincibility leaf and the P-wing. The invincibility leaf is the star and Tanuki suit fused into one, while the P-wing just flat out completes the level for you. What is the point of these? There aren't a ton of power-ups, and in most cases you're best off just sticking with the Tanuki suit. There isn't a health meter in this game either, what with it playing like a 2D Mario game and all, so if you take too many hits you'll be reduced to Small Mario, who loses his cap and has a higher pitched voice for some reason. Most levels have power-ups within them, but there are also these toad houses that will provide new ones to you if you need them. I like how you can run all around the house despite you having no reason to do so whatsoever. There are also these challenge cubes that require you to beat a certain challenge in like 10 seconds. Most of them just ask you to kill an enemy and grab the star medal. Honestly, the game could have just given you the star medals and it would have been the same effect. There are a decent amount of new enemies in 3D Land, with most of them just being pre-existing enemies with a tail attached to them, so that's kind of lame. But hey, at least the actual new ones are pretty cool. We got Wallops, bees. For some of the boss fights you get to fight Boom Boom, returning from Mario 3, who thankfully isn't as pathetic as he was back then, alongside a new character, Pom Pom. I'm glad Boom Boom has a more stable love life than I do, but fighting these guys does get a little annoying after a while considering they're the only other bosses besides Bowser. But hey, the final Bowser fight may potentially be one of my favorites in the series. Sure, you don't really fight him, more so avoid him, but the crumbling set piece and music really help to build up this moment. After saving Peach and watching the credits, you get a cutscene showing that Luigi has been captured, prompting you to save him in the post-game. Yes, just when you thought you were done, the game doubles in length and provides you with 8 more special worlds, which are pretty much just remixed, more difficult versions of the regular levels. Honestly, I kind of prefer the special worlds to the worlds in the base game. The levels are more challenging for one, and some of the ideas here are more unique than their regular counterparts. This is where the statue leaf shows up, the poison mushroom from Mario the Lost Levels appears every once in a while, thanks I didn't need sleep anyway, and Cosmic Marios and Dry Bowsers pop up as well. After completing the first special world, you can unlock Luigi, who, from what I can tell, only has his higher jump and is missing his poor traction compared to his playstyle in other games. If you give him the Super Leaf, however, Luigi turns into Kitsune Luigi rather than Tanuki Luigi, because reasons. Don't know why they went through the trouble of creating a unique model for Luigi just for one power-up, but whatever. Luigi's persona is a fox, I guess. There is once again a super hard level at the end of the game, unlocked after collecting all the star medals and touching the top of each level's goalpost after beating every level as both Mario and Luigi. Yeah, no thanks. It'd be perfectly fine if all you needed were the medals to unlock the level, but playing every level as Mario and Luigi, and making sure you hit the top of the flagpoles just sounds tedious to me, so pass. Well, that was Super Mario 3D Land, and honestly, I don't know how to feel. Mechanically and gameplay-wise, Super Mario 3D Land is a great game, but structurally, presentation, and difficulty-wise, it's easily one of the most basic Mario games ever created. Nothing about this game was original in any way. It's pretty much the status quo on how to make a Mario game. Hell, I didn't even talk about the music because I'm pretty sure there isn't one original composition in this game outside of the main theme. It lacks personality, depth, and originality, but despite all that, it isn't an ungodly horrible game. For a handheld 3D Mario game, it did its job well. It's quick and easy to beat in short bursts, and if you're looking for more out of it, then the extra content outside the main adventure does that nicely. Honestly, if I met someone that had never played a Mario game before, I'd probably suggest they try this one out due to its lack of difficulty and short playtime. In a lot of ways, it feels like Nintendo was just sticking with what worked to help sell this game and the 3DS. And while it did work in the end, I believe the product kind of suffered because of it. While Super Mario 3D Land isn't a terrible game, its lack of depth and creativity merely make it okay in the end. Well, that was Super Mario 3D Land. It's not great, but it's not terrible. However, I have more important things to worry about now. I'm getting another laser eye surgery procedure in order to undo my vision being in stereoscopic 3D. Here's hoping it goes well. Well, I guess I see in monochrome now.